clobbering time.
We've got a new Fantastic Four movie. This is the 4th decade and 4th live-action cast of these characters. So was the 4th time really the charm? Did they finally get it right? Well, I think it's time to stop and rank all 5 Fantastic Four movies from the worst to the best. Before I hop into this clobbering ranking, keep in mind this is just my opinion. Share how you'd rank the films in the comment section down below. And without any further ado, let's hop right into it. Coming in last place is Fant4stic from 2015. Now, a lot of people actually criticize this movie for its darker tone, and I don't find that to be too much of a problem. Even a team as goofy looking as this can have a grounded origin story, and so just kind of the overall vibe I don't actually think is too bad. There's even some body horror aspects as they get their powers, which I think is done very well. Of course, obviously, their suits look kind of bland, but if they were to do something like just have those be their beginner suits and then upgrade to the comic accurate suits, that would have been nice. Obviously, they don't actually do that at the end of the movie. But regardless, the big problem with this movie is just kind of the storytelling, the pacing, and just how everything plays out. Where they probably don't even get their powers until roughly halfway or over halfway through the movie. You can just tell towards the end, they cut a lot of stuff or they just didn't film it. They went through some massive changes as they were editing it. Or maybe they just didn't have a complete script to start with. Because the first like 75 or 80% just feels like the setup, and then you get like a few minutes of kind of a middle act, and then it rushes into the final battle. It just feels very underwhelming, especially what they do with Doctor Doom. But I will say, when it comes to these new versions of the characters, overall I'm not a huge fan of the cast, but I do think Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman were well casted in this film. Still though, the character development is rushed. As they kind of get the origin out of the way and they're like, let's just fast forward a year later and then middle act, final battle, over the course of a few minutes. It's just absolutely insane.
It's clobbering time!
Coming in at number 4 is Fantastic Four 2005. And for the time, I think visually on a special effects level, it is pretty impressive. This is one of the pioneers of Marvel movies. Before the MCU, they were still trying to figure out how do you do the tone for these movies and whatnot. And I feel like this movie is overall pretty underwhelming, especially for an origin story for these characters. But at least you can tell it's trying, and the cast is pretty good. Just their dynamic with each other and their personalities. Now the story here is very thin. It's basically just the Fantastic Four get their powers. Victor Von Doom becomes the villain in a way that is just a cheap copy of Norman Osborn and Spider-Man. And there winds up being some conflict and they fight each other. Although there is some interesting stuff in here. Like how are these superheroes going to profit off of their brand? And the Thing hating his powers and wanting to go back to normal. But just at the end of the day, well, I don't have any huge problems with this movie. As I said, it's just kind of underwhelming. And I think the big thing here is you don't see the Fantastic Four using their powers for that much stuff that's actually interesting. You don't get as many action sequences as you would hope for, and as I said, the story is not complex at all.
It's clobbering time.
Coming in at number 3 is The Fantastic Four from 1994. If you don't know, basically this movie was filmed, it was edited, they played trailers for it, it was supposed to be released, but it turned out the plan from the studio the whole time was to not release it. They just needed to make the movie to maintain the rights. But you can find this pirated on home video or different websites on the internet. And for what it is, this movie is very goofy, it's very cheesy, but I do find it to be pretty entertaining and a nice novelty thing. Where even though the costumes and practical effects are cheap, they are pretty comic accurate, and a lot of this movie feels like it's trying to be true to the comics. The cast isn't super memorable, except for the actor playing Johnny Storm was actually really good.
You're running off like naughty little children. I just had to allow that.
Yeah, well, who asked you, you overgrown tin can?
And while being pretty campy, I still thought Doctor Doom was pretty memorable in this movie. And just overall, the way this story flows together, I actually do like this more than the 2005 film. So if you haven't seen it, I would definitely recommend finding it on a website and checking it out. You'd have fun with it, probably.
It's clobbering time.
Coming in at number 2 is Fantastic Four Rise of the Silver Surfer. And just so we're clear, even though it's this high up on the list, I don't think it's a very well made film. I just think it's an entertaining film. Where the cast is as charming as in the first movie, but I think they're in more fun situations. The Silver Surfer himself is actually a pretty cool character. It was kind of cool seeing Doctor Doom back, even though he was underutilized. But obviously they chickened out with actually using Galactus and they just used his fart. This is definitely a movie where it's only an hour and a half, and there's so much stuff going on in here with Rita and Sue getting married. the team almost splitting up or something. And then obviously you have Silver Surfer, the Galactus Fart Cloud, and Dr. Doom as the villains. And they even have a thing that's kind of fun but very underdeveloped where Johnny Storm is switching powers with people. And it's never fully explained how it works. It's never fully explained what the Silver Surfer's powers are, so you don't know what to expect. And they can really just have anything happen and you have to accept it. So at the end of the day, I find this to be a lot more enjoyable than the first film with this cast. But at the same time, the story's too complex for an hour and a half. There's too much stuff going on, so each plot beat just feels underdeveloped.
It's clobbering time.
But easily coming in at number 1 is the newest film, The Fantastic Four: First Steps. And I think they made the right call here by making this in an alternate universe where it's a retro futuristic 1960s, so it can feel like the original comics from that time. And they just don't have to worry about how well it would fit into the real world, like the other films on this list. Likewise, I think the cast here is the best version of each of these characters. And just when it comes to the visuals, the world building, that's also amazing. And just the costume design I think is the best in here. And when it comes to the CGI characters, their designs are great too. And it's definitely cool that they did not chicken out on Galactus. And so at the end of the day, this is a movie where you can tell the director of this movie is a fan of the Fantastic Four. And just the team making this knew they wanted to make something special for the fans. And there's just a nice theme here about family with all of them sticking together. You have baby Franklin introduced, so obviously Sue and Reed are being parents. That adds more depth to their characters being in that later phase of life. And you also just get a lot of great action throughout this movie. Out of all the films on this list, this one best utilizes each character's powers. And this also just feels like it has the biggest threat, but it builds up to it in a way where you're just invested in the story. And so everything taken into consideration, this movie is in fact fantastic.
Say that again?
But overall, that was just my ranking of the Fantastic Four movies. Let me know your ranking in the comments section down below. As always, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys the next clobbering time.